What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to Kitchen Table TCG. Today we're going to take some time and look at the cost of buying cards and how we come to our percentage basis for buying both store credit or cash offers when people come in to buy cards. All right, the first thing to talk about is the end goal, which is to make a profit. As much as I enjoy opening and running a card store, the goal of a card store is to make money. It has to be a business. If I don't make a profit, then I can't provide space for people to play. I can't take time away from my family to be here. The goal is to make a profit. And in my opinion, somewhere between 20 and 25% is a healthy enough profit margin. Now, this could scale. If you are at a store that's in LA, it's going to be much more expensive. So you're going to need to make more profit. But for us, the profit goal is around 25% at the end of the day. So that is the end goal, is to make a 25% profit. Now, a lot of things go into that. First and foremost, the first thing that goes in that is off the top, TCG Player is going to take fees. Now, if you can sell your cards all locally, that's great. And a lot of people will not calculate in TCG Player fees because they're trying to sell all their cards locally. We want to buy a lot more cards than we can sell locally. Again, that may change if you're in a different area, but we calculate in our TCG Player fees to our buy rate because we're going to pay 13% on average TCG Player fees, eBay fees for the cards. So I have to calculate out that we're going to lose off the top when we sell your card that you trade in, off the top before everything else, we're going to lose 13%. So TCG Player fees have to be calculated in. So you got TCG Player fees. The second thing that has to be calculated in is shipping. It costs money to send a card anywhere. No matter what happens, when we ship the card, we have to pay money. Again, if we're only selling cards locally, we don't have to worry about this, but we're not. We're trying to buy every card that comes into the store, whether there's going to be a local buyer or not. So we have to calculate out shipping costs. Now, I have done some extensive research for you all. I have spent some time on shipping. There's a couple of different ways that we do shipping. Number one is plain white envelopes, and we ship our cards under $5. Under $25, we ship with a plain white envelope. And this is the cost of our shipping. It costs us 6 cents on average for the envelope. It costs us 65 cents, or it's supposed to cost 65 cents for a stamp, and that can kind of fluctuate. We'll get to that in the end. We don't charge anything. I'm not going to factor in anything for that work of stamping that. That's a $10 charge at the beginning. You've got the team bag that we put it in. We put the cards in a team bag and a folder. So we put the card in here, and then we put the folder in there, and then we also use up its sleeve. So all in all, it costs us on average about 79 cents to ship with a plain white envelope. I'm going to round that up to $1 just to make things a little bit easier. But we do free shipping from $5 to $25. So it costs us $1 to do that. Anything $0 to $5, the buyer is actually paying shipping. We actually make a little bit money when the buyer buys cards $0 to $5. So I'm just going to leave that as a wash. But $5 to $25, it costs us $1 for each order. So I have gone through and taken the median, because I believe that's the right way to do that. The median from $5 to $25, the median percentage there is a 5% rate for the shipping. Then cards $25 to $100, we ship obviously with a bubble mailer and tracking. It costs about $4.50 for the bubble mailer. It costs about it costs on average about $5 to ship that order. And we did the median there as well. So this is 25 and this is 100, and this is the percentage that $5 is to that, which calculates out to a median percentage of 8%. Then over $100 we pay for tracked and signature tracking. I'm not going to scale this all the way up, so I just did an average of $7. So that calculates out to an average percentage of the value of the card when shipping is almost 7%. 6.6% is the percentage. So we have to calculate when we are buying cards. And again, the goal here is you walk into our store, we will buy any of your cards. It doesn't matter what they are. We have to calculate out around a 7% rate for shipping. All right, but cards don't just magically ship themselves. So you have your TCG Player fees, you have your shipping. Cards don't just magically ship themselves. There's also a cost and that cost is the employee cost. Yes, employees want to make money. I can't get anybody to work for me for free, unfortunately. But employees are, if you get the right employees, they ship fast. If you train them well, they ship fast. Employee cost is actually not that extreme of a thing. The biggest risk that you have with employees is you have to find employees that you can trust, because you don't want to have extra loss. We'll talk about that in a second. But employee cost is very important. This is hard to calculate because it's going to depend on where you are. But I calculated all the orders from 1 day or from 2 days of sales on TCG Player. And then we ship basically every 2 days. And then I calculated out the cost of my employees for those to ship those orders from those 2 days. And it calculated out to about a 6% charge. We paid our employees, I think it was $350 or something like that to ship. I think it was $300 to ship $5,385 worth of cards. So on average, this can scale based on the orders. If you have an order that is super big with a ton of cards, it's going to take an employee longer. The higher the price of the card, the lower the percentage of your employees will go down. So if you're shipping out a bunch of $100 cards, that's much quicker for an employee to ship versus shipping out, 50 $1 cards or something like that. But on average, I'm calculating about 6% for my employees' time. Whenever we buy a card, 6% of that money from selling the card is going to end up in my employees' hands. Again, that can scale based on the value of the card and on how much you have to pay your employees, or how much you get the opportunity to pay your employees where you work. So you have TCG Player fees, you have shipping, you have employees. The other thing you have when you are buying cards is loss. Cards get stolen from stores. We just had a $5,000 worth of cards stolen from our store. You also have loss when you ship cards online. USPS loses packages. TCG Player buyers claim they didn't receive the package. Lots of things can go wrong when you're shipping cards. I don't know any way to really calculate this out. It would be really hard for me to figure this out. So what I do is I calculate just a 1% loss. I just assume that for every $100 I sell on TCG Player, I will lose $1 based off of whatever happens. You have to calculate something. That's what we've chosen to calculate. And if you lose a lot more, then you have different things, but we calculate a 1% loss. So you have all these things, right? You have 1% loss. You have your employee costs. You have your TCG Player fees and your shipping. And some of you are also going to have overhead. I choose to not include overhead because we are a retail store. Our overhead, I hope, gets paid for by the sales locally. So I don't really calculate in an overhead for our shipping. If we ever end up having to get a separate unit, a separate building where we are shipping cards from, I may have to include overhead, but I kind of run with the idea that our overhead is covered by our local store, and so it doesn't calculate into buying cards. That brings us to a total, when you add up all these things, a total of 27%. 27% of the value of the cards gets eaten up by TCG Player fees, shipping, employees, and loss. Now, this scales too. Obviously, the percentage is a little bit less on a card that is $100 because it works. This is an average across the board. So the goal again is that when you walk in, we can tell you what percentage we buy your cards at, and we know that we're going to also be able to profit 25%. Now, higher end cards, when we buy cards and I do an online collection, I pay a little bit higher, about 10% higher for cards that are over $50 because of the scales. But I'm just trying to give you guys, again, the average of what we need to do. So if you math this out, I'm going to make it super easy here on the end. If you buy a $100 card, if somebody walks in with the $100, let's call it $100 Misty's Gyarados, as I'm working on a PSA order right now. If you calculate out a $100 card and you want to make 25%, so you want to make $25 off that $100 card, and it's going to cost you 27%, so it's going to cost you $27 to sell that $100 card, that equals a $40 you need to pay $48 for the $100 card in order to make a $25 profit margin. So when somebody walks into our store, what we do, we initially offer 40%. Is kind of our flat rate. But if you come in with higher end cards, I'm going to offer you up to 50%. It's kind of what we're going to do if you walk into our store. Now, if you want store credit, we can go up to 65% because we can calculate in that we're going to make some money off of the product that you're trading for. So you can see you have to know these costs in order to calculate out your percentage. I can go up to 48 to 50%, but I want to start there. I'm not going to start there because if you walk in with a ton of $1 cards, it's going to cost me a ton of time for my employees to ship those cards. So we have to start with a percentage, but the key is that you have to be able to know where your money is going so that when somebody walks in with a $1,000 card, you know that you can scale that up. You can scale up to 60 to 65% on a $1,000 card because your overhead, your shipping is going to be less. Or, for TCG Player, there is a minimum amount of fees on an item. It's $50. So you can scale the percentage up to 65%. If you're buying a super, expensive card, you can scale it up. But you have to know where your money's going and where to start. So we start out somewhere between 40 and 50% for a cash offer, and then we can go up to 65% for store credit if that's where we're at. Let me know what you guys think about all these things. What did I miss? What do you do differently? How do you lower your shipping costs? What do you do to make employees cost less? How do you handle all this? And how much loss do you go through? Have yourselves a great day. Remember to be kind to the people around you. We'll see you again next video.